Mic check 1 2, mic check, that's really loud. Okay, how's this? Yeah, that's really hard. That's not good. What's going on?
And he's like 20 pounds, yeah, he's bigger.
Mic check 1 2. Jesus. Okay, mic check 1 2. That should be better. Okay. Test 1 2. All right.
Oh my god, it's such a good show. I hate scary things. No, I don't either, but...
So we'll go ahead and get started for now. Apologize for the audio issues with the live stream. There's always going to be an issue with that until we perfect it, which is never going to happen. So thank you all for coming to this edition of the CyberDEF Dojo. My name is Omar. I'm the founder and president of the CyberDEF Dojo. And we're going to have a really good time today. But first and foremost, I do want to thank our sponsors, specifically SecureLogix, for allowing us to be in this space all crowded like a bunch of sardines. So let's give them as much of a round of applause as possible. And also we have pizza and vegetables, hummus, and water. Sounds so fancy, we have vegetables and hummus. In the conference room over here, so if you haven't had your fill, please go ahead and have seconds. As well as we have USB sticks here, so if you haven't gone ahead and copied the files onto your laptops, if you're going to be following along, please do. If you're on the live stream, please go onto our meetup page and check out the very small picture with very small font to be able to get the right images. And just a word of warning, this was a planned social engineering attack. So essentially all of you have been spreading around STDs the entire night. So congratulations, you've become part of the problem. But beyond that, yeah, go ahead and put it in, it's fine. That's what everyone says. Yeah. That's not what she said at all. So moving on, I would like to introduce our main speaker. His name is Chuck. He's a swell guy, and his dream is to be on camp couch at Fort Living Room. So let's go ahead and give him a round of applause. Thank you, Chuck.
Hey guys, what's going on? Like Omar said, I am Chuck, and we're here today to talk about kind of some of the basic foundational concepts of cybersecurity. In particular, how to build a functioning kind of proving ground or cyber range, right? That's kind of like the buzzword that's going around, and especially in the DoD community, I know. For you guys to use, for you guys to play around with, test tools and things like that that you want to implement in your environment. So a little bit about me, and before I start, actually I have to do kind of a standard disclaimer. I'm an Army guy, right? Work for the National Guard as a cyber operations guy. I'm also a signal guy. So if you need IT stuff, that's me. If you need radio stuff, that's me too, including some of the really nerdy stuff like high frequency radio comms. We actually just got back from Houston, working on some of that stuff during the hurricane. None of what we're presenting today represents the views of the Department of Defense, as well as any of my civilian employers, and the mention or use of a specific tool does not constitute its endorsement by either the DoD or any of my employers. Sorry, that's the have-to statement that we got to give out. So this is what we're going over, building a virtual range. Who is this tailored to? This is tailored to pretty much anybody that wants to get started in the field. Maybe some of the older hands that want to see some different tools that aren't necessarily used. You are going to see some of the standard stuff. You're going to see Security Onion. Everybody's Security Onion, right? We got some STEM stuff that I've included in this. Hopefully what you're going to get out of this, like I said, is the ability to walk away out of here to do a couple things. Number one, have a place to test tools that are out there. And number two, have a place to build tools, test tools that you develop yourself. Because that's the real goal in the cyber world, is not necessarily to use somebody else's stuff, but to build your own and craft your own to each scenario, right? Here's our kind of agenda. Who I am, requirements that you need to have to do this, networking, design, and security. We'll go through the different operating systems we're going to use. We'll actually get those stood up. We have some appliance-based tools that will get stood up as well, some other software tools, and then we'll see the range in action, and then you guys will laugh me off the stage. Who am I? Like I said, I'm an Army guy. I do cyber stuff. I do signal stuff. I've been doing this for probably about since I was in 6th grade, on and off, fiddling with computers and things like that. I also have a civilian gig on the side. I'm the director of cybersecurity for a consulting firm called MCG. I'm also the director of information security for EIS Consulting. Do some other nonprofit stuff here. I'm the vice president for Young AFCIANs for the AFCIA chapter. And I've got a shameless plug that I'll throw in at the end as we finish up for an event we have coming up here next month. So what do you need? You need a computer, right? You need some type of platform in order to start building this range on. One of the nice things about virtualization is that it's host agnostic. You know, you can take these same principles, these same ISO files, these same tools, and kind of stand them up on any type of host platform that you want. Be it VMware ESXi, VMware Workstation Pro, VirtualBox, which is what we're using here today. You could even use Hyper-V if you're a Microsoft guy. I know, boo, Microsoft. But you can kind of build this on anything. And most of the virtual machine managers like VMware Workstation Pro and VirtualBox are also host agnostic. So if you're a Linux guy or gal, or you're a Mac guy or gal, they have versions that you can use to actually host all this stuff on your computer. You obviously need some type of manager. We just talked through some of those. You need a boatload of RAM, okay? And yes, that is a highly technical term. Really, if you want to build the full range, you're going to need at least 16 gigs of RAM on your machine, and not a whole lot else running in the background. If you're only going to spin up a couple of VMs at a time to fiddle around with, 8 gigs you can quasi get away with. But as you're going to see, as we start setting all these things up, the RAM requirements ramp up. Hard drive space, I recommend at least 300 gigs free. That's mostly for Security Onion and for Graylog, which is the SIM piece that I like to use in setups like these. You want at least 100 gigs if you're doing anything on the low end. And the other thing is patience. One of the things that I've built the same kind of setup for exercises. I've used it for clients. I've used it for other stuff. And no setup is ever the same. No matter what you try to do, some little setting always gets tweaked or changed, or, oh, hey, we're going to update this piece of software. Now it's not going to work with anything. So you're going to have to go to like the vulnerable software websites and find an old version of XAMPP to actually make stuff work, which we'll talk about here shortly. So a lot of the stuff is just kind of knuckling through and trying to fight through some technical interesting things. So networking, designing kind of this virtual network, right? It's the exact same way that you would architect a physical network, but you have to figure that you're incorporating not physical switches and routers, but virtualized switches and routers. And what that means is not necessarily that, oh, I'm going to have to configure or build a switch, but you have to know that the software you're using to host all this stuff, some of them do it automatically. for instance, VirtualBox, as we'll see here, actually builds everything kind of in the background. You never really interact with the switches themselves. Hyper-V, you can build switches to connect various different pieces of the network. VMware Workstation Pro, you have a little bit of kind of in between, where you have it doing some pieces and you doing some of the network design stuff. Security is always a concern. In anything that we do on the IT side, we know that there are people looking out to get us, particularly those of us that are in the security field, right? The security concerns that you have with a physical network are just the same as with a virtual network, but then there's some uniqueness to the virtual side of the house that you don't have to worry about in the physical. In the physical side, you have to worry about people pivoting from physical machine to physical machine. You don't have to worry about somebody getting onto your hypervisor and cracking the whole box open, right? This is kind of a rough layout of the network that we're going to be building out today. So you can see we've got our host machine up here. We have our firewall. Pretty much anytime you build a virtualized network, you want to incorporate some type of firewall to separate the VMs from your host machines. In this case, we're using pfSense. It's free, 2 thumbs up for free. It's relatively easy to configure. And as you get further and further into working with pfSense, you start to kind of get a really good sense of how to construct a boundary defense platform, okay? That's the kind of value added on top of the free stuff, right? We're working with 2 LANs. LAN 1 is kind of our quote-unquote production LAN, right? We have a security onion box. We've got a Graylog server. We've got 2 Ubuntu VMs. We're going to throw up a VM of Metasploitable. We'll have OpenVAS to do vulnerability testing if we end up having time. We got Windows 7 Pro. Windows 7 is not included on the thumb drives that are going around to everybody. You do need a product key for that, or yeah. And then hanging off of Windows 7, which is XAMPP and the damn vulnerable web application or appliance. And then we also have Arachne, which is a web scanner, and we'll look at both of those a little bit later on. And then over here, kind of hanging out in LAN 2, is our Kali Linux box. I know everybody uses Kali. No, it's not Arch. I put Kali on there just because everybody uses it and everybody's familiar with it, generally, right? Network security, just real briefly, again, there's security considerations, right? Particularly when you're dealing with like malware and things like that, you have to be really careful about how your networks are configured. You don't want to explode a malicious file in like RenMux or any of the other forensics images and have it escape out into the rest of your virtual network or into your host, right? Recommendations for that, and we'll go through VirtualBox. You'll see how you can kind of segregate those networks and make sure that the host can't talk to the VMs and vice versa, depending on how you want things configured. You should always put a firewall in place between your VMs and your host machine. That's kind of one of my best practices, particularly for what I use this for. I really don't want stuff going out that I don't intend to. And you should always incorporate the use of host-based firewalls on your VMs. So I'm not really going to get into the host-based firewall side of the house tonight. This is more kind of get a general overview of how to spin up these images. But just know that each of these machines has firewalls built in. If it's Linux, they have IP tables. If it's Windows, it has Windows Firewall. Super effective. Or Windows Defender, also super effective. And you should use them as appropriate. We're going to be working off of VirtualBox this evening. VirtualBox is free. Again, I say it is free. It is a virtual machine manager. It's not really a true hypervisor, I guess you would say. It's not its own independent platform. It requires a host PC to base itself off of. It can support almost any operating system as a virtual machine. It is somewhat easy to configure. I threw the somewhat in there because it does have some kind of quirkiness that's stuff like VMware Workstation Pro, which you do have to pay about 112, 120 bucks for, does not have. And with that being said, we're through over half the slides. I'm not a big slide guy, guys. Just to let y'all know, that's not really my jam. So the majority of this is going to be hands-on demonstration, kind of walking the dog through getting all these things set up. So this is VirtualBox. What it is, what it does, it hosts and creates virtual machines for you. You can see that I have Windows 7 already built. I did that for time, and also I own the product keys for those. So yeah, no free Windows for y'all. Key buttons, new. Kind of self-explanatory. Probably builds a new virtual machine. Settings allows you to go in and alter various machine settings if you have a machine that you've selected. If you go to File and then Preferences, though, that's your global configuration for VirtualBox. Where your default machine folder is, how you're controlling inputs, what keys and shortcuts you want to use, controlling updates. Again, so just like with regular machines, you need to configure virtual machines to update as often as necessary for the projects. I've got machines on here that we're going to build that I will probably never update just because I want a vulnerable host, right? I want an unpatched host to be able to play with. Network is kind of one of the bigger tabs. You can see that you can actually configure NAT, Network Address Translation networks. That's to allow from VirtualBox out. You can also configure host-only networks. These host-only networks, we're not going to use them. We're going to use internal networks. And we'll talk about the little bit of difference between the network and stuff when we actually build our first virtual machine. But there's 3 different ways to skin the cat are playing around with internetworking in VirtualBox. One is bridge networks. One is host-only. And the other big one is going to be your internal networking only, which is what we're primarily going to be using this evening. Questions about VirtualBox? Yes, Jeff. Why would we NAT? Well, so a lot of these VMs, when we're setting them up, So Jeff's question was, why would we want to NAT? Period, when we're working in a virtualized environment. Like I said, virtual machines for actual work. You may want to keep them patched and updated, so you may need internet access to do that. If you're out of security onion box, and you want to be able to download the snort rules, you're going to need NAT in order to accomplish that kind of stuff. If you want to be able to install even some of the VMs, you require internet access to install those. I know Greenbone, which is OpenBOS, actually requires internet in order to connect up. But as far as NATing instead of bridging, so NAT is actually using your host computer's IP addresses and stuff out in your host computer's network stack. That's one technique. The better technique is bridging, which actually exposes the virtual interface to the network as opposed to using stuff through your machine. That is the better practice. I have had issues with bridging on cellular devices. So using like cell phone hotspots and stuff like that, sometimes bridging won't work because of the way they're configured. I'm using NAT tonight because I'm hotspotting off of my cell phone. But bridging is by far the preferred way to go. That hit what you're getting at? Excellent. Okay, so moving on. You have also some appliance buttons, import appliances. Some manufacturers will pre-configure machines for you to use. They call them appliances. We'll actually be pulling 1 or 2 in tonight, so you'll be able to see those as we use them. And then the machine menu, basically everything that's on this menu right here, you can right-click the machine and get to. Cool? Out freaking standing. So we are going to build our first virtual machine now. We are going to go with our firewall, pfSense. These are the system requirements. This is how you would actually configure and how we're actually going to configure VirtualBox in order to host this VM, right? It's based on FreeBSD. pfSense doesn't require a whole lot of RAM to operate. It's fairly lightweight. You can add more RAM if you want to, but there's more places where RAM is more important. Hard drive size, I put 2 gigs on there. You barely even need that. Video memory is a set. So video memory, a quick note, that's a setting in VirtualBox for each machine. You'll see with security onions, some of them are kind of finicky with what you pick, and some of them you actually have to go back and change after you install. It's only getting 1 CPU. We're only giving it 1 core, and I'm giving it 3 NICs. So we're setting up a WAN interface, a LAN interface, and we're setting up a second LAN interface on what pfSense will label OPT1, optional 1. Okay. We're just going to name this pfSense. Like we said, it is a, where are you? BSD based, and this is 64-bit. We're leaving it 1024 megs of RAM, and we'll go ahead and create a virtual hard disk. A virtual hard disk is kind of your storage and partition platform. The virtual machine will see that as its actual hard drive. It's always good just to check before you save where that file is going. It's going to my default directory, and VirtualBox creates a directory based off of what you name each machine. Okay, so it creates a directory automatically. 16 gigs is way too much. You can use the slidey bar, or what's easier is just to double click and type 2 gigs. And away we go. So I'll right click on that. You can see the options over here under storage. You have the optical drive is empty. To add the ISO that we're using, you would right click, choose the disk image. This one's underneath operating systems and tool virtual appliances. And that'll load that up. And then once that is loaded, we'll go to settings. And settings for the machine is where we're actually going to build the network. So we'll go down to the network tab, and you can already see that adapter 1 is enabled using NAT. Again, if you're connected to like hardstand internet, commercial wireless, you're going to use bridged. I'm using NAT because I'm connected through my cell phone. So adapter 1 is going to become our WAN interface. Adapter 2, we're going to go ahead and enable, and we're going to make it an internal network adapter on LAN 1. And we're also going to enable adapter 3, also on internal network. And now we're actually going to create a LAN 2. So when we hit OK, what VirtualBox is going to do is create a virtual switch for those 2 networks. LAN 1 already exists because that's what my Windows machines are plugged into. But for LAN 2, it's going to, in the background, in its own little space, is going to create that switch for you. You will never see or interact with that switch from VirtualBox. And we'll start it off. So it wants to pull over to my other screen. If I can find the mouse, there we go. Since we'll auto boot. We'll just let it go through the deal. And you can type I for the installer. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go through and pick the default settings, quick, easy install. We're going to proceed. It's getting swap partition error. We don't have dual partitions on this VM, so it's all for one and one for all. Okay, so we're just going to continue on with the defaults. And here in about a minute or so, it'll start the reboot process. One of the other things that you want to make sure you do, especially if you're throwing a firewall into the mix, is change the default username and password. That's a pro tip. So one note about pfSense, it is really finicky. You can right-click on the CD icon down here at the bottom and actually eject the image. But if you do it before it finishes booting up all the way for the first time, it freaks out for some reason. Again, that's kind of one of those, learning moments. So what I'm going to do is actually going to power this down so I can remove that because it's going to keep booting to the image. And what I did just there is I clicked on it and I just clicked the check mark next to the image name, and it removed it from being loaded. So we'll start that guy back up again. With any luck, it won't crash. And it'll go through its startup. So right now we have the firewall installed. We're going to configure the interfaces real quick. It'll pop up with the management console. Okay, so this is the pfSense management console. We're not going to go super in depth with this guy. The important things that you can see, number one, we have a WAN interface and we have a LAN interface. Our third interface, our third network adapter that we created is not there. And it will not be there until we log into the web portal and actually add that sucker. There's some weirdness that goes on with pfSense. Sometimes it shows up, sometimes it doesn't. And you can see that pfSense has already assigned a DHC or a network address to the LAN, which we're going to change now. You just hit, there's a button that says set interfaces IP addresses, which is option number 2. WAN we're going to leave as DHCP. LAN is what we're going to change. And our LAN address for our network address for LAN 1 for this interface is going to be 192.168.15.1. Subnet is a /24. And we just keep hitting enter because we are not doing IPv6. And we will go ahead and enable the DHCP server. Yes. Sure. Okay. So what we're doing here on the LAN side is giving it a public IP address. It is a what's called a Class C address, which is a 192.168 address. That /24 that I mentioned is called the subnet mask. For those of you guys who are not familiar, a subnet mask kind of tells the computer and anything communicating with a computer or machine what is the network identifier and what is actually unique to the machine. So with a /24, each one of those sections separated by a period are called octets. So there's 8 bits in each octet. The /24 says that the first 24 bits, or the first 3 octet, are the network ID, which leaves the last octet for your host. No problem. So DHCP is what gives your computer's IP addresses automatically. We're going to go ahead and set up a range. We're going to be configuring some of these with static IP addresses, meaning we're going to manually tell it what address it's going to use. We're going to be configuring some of the machines with dynamic addresses using DHCP. So we're going to start our scope at 192.168.15.20, and we're going to end it at 192.168.15.50. You want to keep your DHCP scope as narrow as possible. That's, again, also a common security deal because you don't want a whole bunch of extra machines hopping on your network that aren't supposed to be there. It's asking us if we want to revert to HTTP as the web configurator protocol. When we hop on our Ubuntu box here shortly, we'll actually be logging in with a web interface. We're not using HTTPS right now because we're not going to generate certificates at the moment. So we'll go ahead and hit yes. And that will give us our management address. And now you see our IP address on the LAN side has changed. That's it. That's all you got to do from here in pfSense. Questions? Comments? Outstanding. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize this guy. We're going to put it away. And the next box we're going to spin up will be, in the interest of time, actually we're going to spin up our Security Onion box. So what is Security Onion? Security Onion is a network monitoring solution that combines about 4 or 5 different tools, depending on who you're talking to, all under one suite. It comes kind of pre-built, so you don't have to do a lot of configuration. You just want to play with it out of the box, but you do have to do some configuration. So for those of us kind of following along at home, this is the setup for our Security Onion box. It's Ubuntu based. We're giving it a boatload of RAM, 8 gigs just by itself. That really, if you're using it as an actual sensor, that's the bare minimum that you need this sucker. Hard drive space, I'm giving it 100 gigabytes. It does do full packet capture if you enable it, so anything it triggers on will actually collect that traffic and save it. So it needs a pretty decent amount of space. Video memory. It is a pain in the rear when it comes to video memory. When we set this thing up, it will start out as 16. Once we get everything installed on it, we'll bump it to 128 so you can actually see the entire screen. It freaks out on install if you do anything other than 16 megs. We're giving it three CPUs, and it has 2 NICs. One of those NICs is its monitoring interface, which will be tied into LAN 1. One of those interfaces will be its management interface, which will be on LAN 2. One other piece of Security Onion, there is a common rule set that you can use that it will pull off the internet. Snort is free. You can get a free snort code. You may as well use your environment. To the free version of Snort is that the updates are at a slower pace than the full-blown paid-for commercial version. So instead of getting stuff on a feed, every 30 seconds, whenever stuff happens, you're getting, typically I think a day to up to a couple of days behind, depending on what it is and what their cycle is. For those of you guys who've never played around with Snort before, it is a industry standard IDM detection system. It is used everywhere from commercial environments to government. Security Onion is what we use on the Army cyber side a lot of times when we're doing short-term throwdown monitoring pieces. And again, you can get it for free, so why not? What's that? You can install Snort into pfSense. pfSense is kind of cool in that you can add a ton of different modules into it, right? And there's a lot of stuff you can do side by side. But in the instance of doing it with Security Onion, I like to have separate devices for separate purposes. That way, I'm not having to fiddle around. I know if something breaks on one device, it's that device that's broken, not one of the other devices that's kind of hanging off of it. Especially in a virtualized environment also for pfSense, it can sometimes make things go kind of wonky. I had a friend of mine who did a joint implementation, Snort and pfSense, and it worked for about a week, and then it just started to kind of degrade performance-wise. And the only thing that he could figure was that Snort just started to kind of eat up that machine. So, yep, yeah. Suricata is IDS. It's another piece that you can throw on Security Onion as well. So we got one of the gents in the crowd saying that he did it side by side with people. So awesome. So right now we're going to start our Security Onion box off. It is Linux based. It is Ubuntu 64. We're giving it 8 gigs of RAM. We'll go ahead and create the virtual hard drive. And we're giving that 100 gigs. So network configuration wise, we'll go to settings on this guy. We'll go to network. It always defaults to NAT, just so you know, whenever you create a virtual machine. It always defaults. So you want to make sure that you're going in and changing that. Our first interface is going to be our internal LAN 1. One of the things that we have to do with this is promiscuous mode. Promiscuous mode allows it to see all the traffic that's on that network segment that it's connected to. And we're going to do allow VMs. I don't want it to actually pull any traffic in from anything else that's not a virtual machine. After we'll enable, it's going to be an internal network also. We're talking about. And we'll make sure the display is set to 16 megs. What's that? For security end, yeah. We'll so settings, the CPU power is under system processor. And we'll drag that up to 3. Thanks for catching that. So again, to add the ISO file, we just click the optical drive. I already have it preloaded. It's also in your operating system tool VAs folder. And then we'll start it up. Once we start the install process, we're going to kind of let this guy run in the background. It does take a decent amount of time, so we'll move on to other machines to get this thing up and going. We'll let it do its freak out moment. This is just how the life off. Y'all have used Security Onion out and about. You had something? Okay, so bare bones you can get away with. So you can turn off full packet capture in Security Onion. You don't have to enable it. But one of the benefits of using Security Onion is it actually brings all that info in and allows you to analyze it there within the box. So if you're going to use a bare and do full for 50 gig minimum on a small network like this, you're probably okay with that. You're not going to get a whole lot of traffic through, but if you like its own standalone, you could actually hook a network attached storage up to a hard stand server for this guy and keep all those files. The ways to actually implement Security Onion. Like I said, we're just going to kind of keep going through the defaults on these. It's not connecting to the internet. That's probably because we have not configured our firewall yet. So we'll go back and we're going to spin up an Ubuntu box real quick. And give sense not taking the default. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin up an Ubuntu box. Ubuntu version there. It is also free. It has a desktop version, a server version. It is resource light. It does not require you to run it or work. And we're going to be creating 2 of these eventually, but for right now, we're just going to do 1. We'll go ahead and give it 2 gigs of RAM. It does like a little bit of memory, and it does like a little bit of hard drive space. It requires at least, I think, 13 gigs is what the actual box says. We don't need to do anything in the system usage. We need to make sure that our network is on LAN 1 and that it's attached to the internal network. And then again, this one's gonna be under Linux operating systems. And then we will start it up. Uh, 32. Yeah, at one point I was able to virtualize an entire Windows domain, like a domain controller, file server, 3 Windows computers, a Debian box, 2 Ubuntu boxes, Kali, and a pfSense. And I didn't have any noticeable impact to what I was actually doing on the computer itself. It was pretty nice. Is that better? Oh, wow. That's pretty good. Okay, so installing Ubuntu is very straightforward. There's a button. It says install. We can, just for your viewing pleasure, you hit the install button. We're not going to install third-party updates. That's not our jam. Yep, we'll go ahead and install now. You can do disk encryption and logical volume management when you're setting up Security Onion, when you're setting up Ubuntu. We're not going to do that for the time being. Security Onion, you don't want to. It actually interferes with how it operates. But just know that that is an option. We are not in New York. We're just going to name this UBV1. Yeah. Oop. It's a. Nope. There we go. The nice thing about Ubuntu is it's super fast. It all usually takes about 2 minutes, give or take. And while that's going, I'm going to turn around. Okay. So we do have a connection to the internet. So talking through a couple of features in the machine window as we're waiting for this guy to come up. Disk images to use just like CD drives. Work settings kind of on the fly, depending on what the VM will allow. If you have a USB device that's plugged into your computer, you can actually pass that over using VirtualBox to the machine. And install the guest edition CD image, which we'll do on Security Onion. And on one of the other VMs, actually drag and drop files or copy and paste files back and forth between the host. And the nice thing with VirtualBox is you can say, hey, I only want You never know, Omar. You never know. They could be everywhere. Okay, how's that? People on live stream creeping on the internet. Oh boy. Okay, so I'm going to fire up terminal real quick. We'll test and see if we can ping to our PF Sense box. Which we're good, so that means we're on the same network as our firewall. So in theory, if we open up Firefox, this guy is not happy. Again, this is one of those wonderful live moments. We'll shut this guy down and see what happens. We may have to just reinstall that guy. How many folks are actually doing this as we're going through? Yeah. It's, this is kind of one of those deals where excellent. Omar was just saying, for those of you online, that recorded and saved online for posterity. That's kind of scary. I don't know if I'm okay with that. Okay. So obviously Ubuntu is not happy at the moment. So to remove VMs entirely out of the cluster, you can right-click, remove, and deleting all files will remove both the directory and the virtual hard drive. give this another go. So while this guy is going, in the background, we're going to go ahead and start building another one of our VMs. Actually, we can do it side by side. Kali Linux, for whatever reason, loves to take forever to install. A note on Kali, even though it is kind of related to Ubuntu, it is Debian based. Do not select version Ubuntu. Instead, go with the generic Linux 2.6, 3, and 4. I also usually give Kali a decent amount of memory because I do a lot of network scanning and stuff like that off of it. So anywhere between 6 to 8, we've got memory to spare here. So we'll give it 8. And then the hard drive size for this guy, I usually do at least 20. We'll do it 30 for right now. I'll also give my Kali base 2 CPUs to fiddle around with. And our Kali, if you guys remember from the network diagram, will go on LAN 2. And we won't turn promiscuous mode on yet. I'll go ahead and let this guy start and pop back over to our Ubuntu box. Where we'll try the install again. Connectivity. Okay, so it's GoGo Gadget installing. And we will get Kali spun up. We'll go ahead and do the graphical install for right now. You will notice some error messages as each one of these VMs installs. That's due to it being in a virtualized environment and them just not being happy with life. What's that? Sorry. A time service? Yes. So Jeff just asked if we ever do a time service when we set this up. Actually, when we go into the web interface for PF, we'll configure network time protocol. That way, all the devices across the network have the same time. It's actually relatively important for this type of range because when you pull the trigger in one box, you want to be able to catch and identify it based off of the logs that are being collected throughout this ecosystem that we're building. Yes, we know. We'll configure the network later. We're going very secure on the passwords for 4 characters. And again, on the Kali side of the house, I'm pretty much going through and selecting the defaults that it already has. We're not going for anything super fancy. It prompts us to write the changes to the disk. We just hit continue on. And now it's doing its thing. And apparently Ubuntu has decided that now would be a great time to go ahead and download updates for itself. Thanks. Absolutely. All the internets all day long. So while Ubuntu is doing its thing, we can go ahead and spin up Graylog. Graylog is, I believe, one of our appliances that we're actually going to import. Yep. Okay, so Graylog is actually built as a pre-built appliance. You can also download it as a package from Linux. So if you had a Linux box that you already had stood up that you wanted to pre-configure, custom configure with however much storage you want, you can do that. The appliance only sets itself up with about 50 gigs storage space, which is not a whole lot considering what it's supposed to be used for. It does automatically give itself 2 CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM, which is fine for this environment that we're using it for. When you're importing an appliance, any setting that you see listed in here are settings that you can change. If you don't want to change anything, you can just hit import. And it takes about 50 seconds for it to spin the box up. And again, we have to do some configuration on the network side. We want to make sure that it connects to internal network. The Graylog appliance defaults actually to bridged. So we don't really need this guy going outside anywhere. It's just going to be on our wonderful LAN 1 internal network. We can go ahead and start this guy and let it start going through its startup script. Have any of you guys used Graylog before? Okay, sweet. So this is a new tool. Graylog combines the best things about Elk Stack with just it's basically Elk Stack on steroids to some extent. It doesn't use Kibana, which is Elk Stack's visualization piece. It uses its own interface, which you guys will see once we get it up. It's extremely easy to configure. You don't have to know how to write code, and there's a whole bunch of people that develop plugins for it that you can just download from the internet for free and steal their work, or excuse me, borrow permanently. What's that? For a quick setup, this log easy. I mean, it takes literally just as long as it takes to run the startup scripts to spin it up. And the nice thing with Graylog is it can take inputs from anything. If something outputs something, you can actually build an input in Graylog to accept that data in and parse it into its log stack. For a quick and easy setup on a range like this, I have not played with anything better. All those guys are still going. While we're waiting, we'll go ahead and start up our second Ubuntu box. Bless you. Same settings as before. 20 gigs-ish of space. So one of the things that I changed, just so you guys know, you have different hard disk file types that you can use. VDI is the default. That's the VirtualBox hard drive. I changed the Ubuntu to VMDK, which is what VMware Workstation uses, and Ubuntu seems to like that a lot better. And again, we're just going to change this so that it's on internal network. It's on our LAN that we're building. Absolutely. Yes. Yep. You can clone it, and that may be with how long this has taken. Oh, there it goes. And Callie's still doing it. Oh, there we go. So we're not going to use Callie as a network manager. This is kind of bouncing back over. Yes. What you got? Yes. IP addresses matter. They have feelings too. So what we'll do when we go into the web interface for pfSense is we'll actually go in and make sure that the configurations are correct. You can configure DHCP and your IP address schema for those networks from VirtualBox and from pfSense. I prefer to do it in pfSense because it gives me more control. I like to be able to to run my own destiny, so to speak. And if we have a firewall that can do it, if we have an appliance that can do that function, why would we use something that's on the host? We can use something that's virtualized and that's part of the environment. For those of you guys who have not used Kali, it prompts you it asks you if you want to install the Grub bootloader on the disk. Grub is the screen that pops up on some of the versions of Linux that allows you to select, do I want to run this as a live image? Do I want to run this as the regular install? Okay. And you can see here selecting our only partition, which is also the master and the boot partition. Go team go. It looks like our Ubuntu box is cooperating again. Maybe. And Kali is done with its install process, as is Ubuntu. Cross over to into the VMs. Okay, awesome. So Firefox actually launched on our first one. Did not throw up that crazy awesome error message. I'm going to go ahead and get this guy launching on the install process real quick, and then we'll start playing around with pfSense. Go for it.
Does anyone ever have trouble capturing traffic or executing injection AZ objects while using Alpha Card and VirtualBox?
That is an interesting question. You want to propose that to the field because I have not played around with that level in VirtualBox. Yeah, Mark, go ahead and repeat the question.
The question is, what up, Honest Abe? All right, so the question is, does anyone have trouble capturing traffic or executing injection during a de-authing while using Alpha Card and VirtualBox?
Drivers. Drivers are sometimes always the answer. So what I'm doing right now is just going to our web interface for our firewall. Provided that everything's jamming right, it should pop up here in just a second. Well, I said provided that things are good. Well, that's not promising. Yeah, I know. It doesn't come. It doesn't come built into. Yeah, no. It, what did they go? Yeah. Interesting. That's why. Instead of an work, it was not happening. We'll start that guy back up. Another tally is up, so that's nice. There it is. That's okay. So this is the login screen. We didn't change anything from the defaults because we're not security professionals or anything. The initial web configurator. Really? Which one? Oh my. You get what, ladies and gentlemen, you get what you pay for. Wow, it freaking hosed everything. Except pfSense. You know, VirtualBox is just kind of one of those. Sometimes it works great. Sometimes it doesn't work so great. Well, I mean, Windows is the most stable of operating systems, right? Stand by. Do we have any experiencing technical difficulties music that you could? I heard the Jeopardy music going. That's awesome. All right, this guy like 2 seconds. Sweet. So yes. So you can actually. So the Graylog can either send or receive from Security Onion. So you could use one as the collector for the other, bounce back and forth. I like Graylog just because of the dashboards that you can build. It makes it really easy to pull queries. So you can use Graylog just like you can Kibana, Logstack, where you can say, hey, I want every log that's come in with the mention of root and failed password, and hit go, and it'll pull up a screen depending on how you have it configured of this number of times this has happened. This is the histogram of the past like 24 hours that this has happened. These are the source information, and you can build all that stuff out to your heart's content pretty much, and it's free. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna get these guys powered back on again. And once pfSense comes back up, we'll turn on the rest of the virtual machines. What we're going to do now, we actually have 90% of our range built, right? We have our firewall. Log server is actually up. I'll show you guys about the one-step configuration process for that server. It is ridiculously easy. And then we'll start. We have a couple minutes left to actually play around and show what these and show what all this stuff can do together. Just for the entertainment value, watching stuff crash, awesome, love it. Hey, you know. Okay, so real quick, this is the Graybox interface. The username and password is very secret because it tells you exactly what it is right at the start. You can see it's already pulled a DHCP address, but since it's a server, we're not going to allow it to DHCP, right? So we're actually just going to change its IP address real quick to something that's outside of the DHCP scope. There is one command on Graylog to get this thing up and the IP address, and that's sudo Graylog -ctl reconfigure. And that's it. You just let it go. So for DNS, I'm just using Google's because it's fast and easy. Time server, Jeff mentioned about NTP. You can use pfSense as default. You can actually select whatever NTP server that you want to. And we do want to make sure that we are on Central Time. Right now, we're just going to leave the default pfSense NTP server there. It's asking us to configure the WAN interface, which you already know is just DHCP based off of what the host computer is doing for the moment. The LAN address we configured when we first stood up pfSense. And we are not going to change the password for the moment. And once pfSense reloads, it'll pop us into the display. We have one other step to do in here. So you guys remember when pfSense first popped up, it only showed 2 network cards, right? So if we go to interfaces assign, you can see that there's an available network port that's sitting there. So all you have to do is add it. It adds it as OPT1. Save it. And now we can go in and give it its network name. You do have to go to the interface itself and enable it. We're doing a static IP address for that interface. These IP addresses, by the way, are on the network diagram. You have to make sure that the subnet mask is changed to /24. It also wants us. It also reminds you to adjust the DHCP server, which we'll do real quick. And you can select up here which interface you want. Bless you. And we'll give it the same style range. That way our Kali box can pick up an IP address. All right. And we'll save that sucker. Hush. And it's been saved successfully. So that's all that has to be done to configure pfSense to get both sides of this network up and working. And with Graylog working, what we can do now is just real quick, because we are out of time, unfortunately, is go to the IP address that we gave it through the web interface. Defaults are also super secret admin. Yeah. Did y'all see the article about Equifax that their Argentina branch you had admin as their yep username and passwords. It's spectacular. This is great. When you first pop into it, it's going to let you know, hey, I use data, and it's got relatively decent starting information. What you usually are faced with after your initial logon is the screen, which will pop up here in just a second. You actually don't have to do any other configuration on Graylog other than this if you just wanted to like pipe in syslogs from Linux into it. It would start capturing as soon as you have the collector configured to pop stuff over. There's all sorts of stuff you can do in Graylog just to kind of highlight stuff. Streams allow you to create custom searches based off of what application the messages are coming in, where in the message a certain string appears. You can use regex, regular expressions, to actually pull in and analyze and compare data to pick stuff out. Dashboards, you can create your own custom dashboard just based off of the data that you want to see. This one's showing the Nginx overviews for Graylog itself. There's been 28 requests in the last since we stood it up, and you can actually look at the histogram and then click on the histogram a time and pull up the files. And you can do this style dashboard with pretty much anything that you can think of. If Graylog receives it in, you can create a dashboard off of it. And if any of you guys want to stick around, I can actually show you guys Graylog a little bit more in depth. But I believe we are out of time. Is that correct, Omar? We're gonna build a dashboard in Graylog real quick, and then actually show what an mmap scan looks like in Security Onion. Cool. Okay. No more online people. So what we're gonna do real quick, we're gonna do two things. We had Security Onion installed and configured. We're going to spin that guy back up so you guys can see kind of oh no. Oh, that's unfortunate. Oh well. We're just going to play. I'm going to play with this in the background as I'm doing everything else for you guys over on screen number 2. Pay no attention to what's happening on screen number 1. It doesn't exist. It's dead to you. It's not here at all. Okay, so in order to send logs to Graylog, you actually have to do some manual configurations. In Linux, it's extremely easy. It is one line. Okay, that's all you got to do. And that line, that file that you have to go to, happens to be in the etc folder. And if we ls to show the files, you'll see this little wonderful file called rsyslog.conf. Does everybody see that file? Isn't it delightful? It's so pretty. And if we cat that guy, this is what that file looks like. You really don't need to know any of the file other than this last line that we're about to add, okay? So if I don't step on my toes too terribly, we're going to live dangerously. Yeah. Okay. So we're in VI real quick. All we're going to do is just add a line to the end, which looks like this. Okay, so what that line is doing, it is saying any and all log files going through our syslog, send them to the IP address of our Graylog server using port 514. We only have one @ symbol, so that means we're sending it over UDP. If it had 2 ats, it would be over TCP. And then it's giving us, hey, we want it to use our syslog. We want it in the syslog protocol 23. That's what's actually going to get us to the format that we need to need to have it. We wrote the file, we quit, and we'll cat it again real quick. I received your test notification, Omar. And you can see that file's in the bottom. Once that's done, we'll restart our syslog. Oop. Make sure it's back up, which it is. And if we hop over here to Graylog, you guys can see that we now have logs being fed into Graylog from Ubuntu, right? So if we want to, like last night I created a stream just playing around to pull out anything that involved root, any actions taken by a root user, right? So to do that in Graylog, we create a stream, title, root. Sorry, popping over to Security Onion real quick to push it along. A description is required. We're just going to say root activities. And you can actually have it pull matches from the main stream and only show them in this panel. We're not going to do that. We want to be able to still have that main pane of glass. So now that that's created, we can go down and we can manage the rules for the stream. We don't have to select an input. All we have to do is just add a stream rule. Fields are going to be your standard syslog format fields. So you could do, which is going to be the actual body of the message. You could do application names. So let's say that we wanted to look for anything that's SSHD. You know, somebody trying to log in using SSH on a Linux box. We could do application name meets SSHD. But for right now, we're just going to do, it's in the message. It contains root. Not rot. So the result is in the field message must contain root. If we save that and I'm done, what we have to do is start the stream. And then if we give it a click, it hasn't found anything yet, right? We haven't done any activities as rot, as Omar is saying pedantically in the background. You like that big word? I thought you would. It's a true story. Okay. So let's say that, oops, not the right VM. Do a quick who am I? I'm UBV1. And I want to just do a quick sudo su, right? Which should generate a root. You can see right now that we didn't select it to update. You actually have to tell the system how often you want it to update. But if you look, you already see the log in there. Pretty cool, right? So let's say that I'm on my main search page, right? And see this pretty histogram. I want to, let's say I want to do like root and failed, okay? I hit search, and it's going to find anything containing both. It's going to contain anything containing root and anything containing failed, because I did not do. Okay, so nothing was found. So if we go back to our box here, Let me exit out. We may still be underneath. Nope. I'm just typing in random passwords right now. I may have just screwed up the formatting of that. It you know, it depends on the system. I can't remember what I got it to. I think it was password failed, actually. Or failed password. Nope. No, it should generate it. We may actually still be, we're not underneath the stream. Oh, it's because we still had a session going. It didn't freaking there it is. Right there. Authentication failure. Yeah. So we could actually take this authentication failure and we could add it to a dashboard that already exists. So if we go over here to dashboards, create dashboards, we just name this auth failures. If we go and do that search query again, we can add this histogram view to that dashboard. Name it whatever we want. Right now it's just showing like the last 5 minutes of data. And if we were to pull up that dashboard, every time we pulled it up, it would refresh the last 5 minutes and show us all the authentication failures in a histogram. You can also do counts. There's about 15 different widgets that you can do in Graylog to customize the dashboards and customize what the streams do. With the streams, let's say that you have that stream set up for root. We could also output that stream to Security Onion. If we had like a standalone box that was not collecting from things on the network, we could actually push it into Security Onion for packet analysis or for keepsake. Or we could put it to about any other type of think of with Graylog's plugins. And one last thing real quick. Content packs are really cool. They're community developed. You can get them on Graylog, graylog.org. You have plugins, content packs, Guelph libraries. We'll look at plugins real quick. They actually have an Active Directory plugin, or they did. No. Really? Maybe it's under content packs. There we go. Active Directory auditing. It's a content pack. What that guy actually gives you is a dashboard with all the different critical Windows event system logs. And it's just a whole copy and paste deal imported into Graylog. And as long as you have Windows pointing its event logs in syslog format, it'll pull into Graylog and show you some really cool statistics without having to do a whole lot of work trying to knuckle through programming it yourself like you do with Kibana. And Security Onion is going to take forever and a day. So anybody who wants to hang around is more than welcome to. But that is Graylog. If anybody has any questions about Graylog in particular. Yes, thank you. Jeff reminded me, you guys don't get to escape without shameless pitch. Whoa, 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 whoa. Why is it gotta be like that, Omar? So I mentioned AFCEA. AFCEA used to stand for the Armed Forces Communications and Electronics Association. They have now just shortened it to AFCEA because our attention spans don't last that long to say the whole what it used to be. I am the VP for Young AFCEANs. One of our events that we have coming up is at Topgolf. It's on October the 10th. It is a mentor protege night, right? So what it is Paul's opportunity, especially it's particularly focused on folks that are working within the DoD arena, right? We're not going to turn anybody away. But it is a mentor protege night, so we're bringing seniors from around the community, both military and civilian. I think somebody in the room is potentially going to be there. Mr. Jeff there in the corner is confirmed. We also have the vice president and CISO of Rackspace that's going to be there. A couple of the commanders from the cyber operations group on the Air Force side, other community folks, quite a pretty decent slew of people. So it's a mentor protege night. Like what we're hoping for you guys to get is kind of lasting mentor relationships, because with senior mentors or with peer mentors, because peer mentorship I feel is just as important as superior subordinate relationships in a lot of ways, right? So if you guys want to come out, we are not charging anything for it. It is dinner, and if you like our Facebook page, you get a free drink. So 2 thumbs up there, right? Registration is limited. It is on the website now. I will show that to y'all briefly. alamoafcia.org, and that's it. I appreciate y'all working through the technical difficulties with me. That is IT. That is actually one of the things that I expected to happen, and it's one of the things that you should expect to happen within your environment. So.
All right, thank you so much, Chuck. All right, really quickly, next month things are going to be a little bit different. Next month we have the security engagement series. What we're going to be focused on next month is going to be on providing security information for people, for the general public. So it's going to be focused on security hygiene. So we have 3 speakers for next month. And then after those speakers speak, we're going to have them do like a panel discussion for people to ask questions. One of our speakers is going to be Corey. Also, we have Dr. Juan Muñez of UTSA, as well as Brett Pyatt, CEO of Jungle Disk. They're all going to be talking about something within security hygiene, privacy, data resiliency, as well as best practices online. So if you guys want to be a part of that, it's going to be a free event at Launch SA, which is going to be in the Central Library next month on the 3rd Tuesday of the month, on the 17th, October 17th. We'll have that on the meetup as well. Another thing is that we're going to have the San Antonio IT Symposium. That's going to be sometime next month. We'll get the dates and we'll put that out there in the meetup. But Jeff is going to be a speaker there. And they've somehow, for some reason, invited me to be a keynote speaker there. So I'm going to do my best to embarrass myself in front of CIOs and very important people and perhaps take off my pants. But I don't know. Anything could happen. October 19th. So 2 days after the Security Engagement Series, pants will come off. So thank you so much for coming. We will definitely see you next month, and have a safe drive home. And thank you all for joining us on the live stream.